From the pen of Mr. Robin Parker is the Edenfield Scrolls. A Rochdale lad, known as Jim Ashworth, were getting a bit past his prime, so he thought, as he'd moved to the country, to bide out the rest of his time. He found a nice cottage that suited near Edenfield, just up the road, and behind it a greatly large garden where all fruit and veg could be grown. When trying to sleep night he moved in, from ceiling came sounds of a mouse. So he went up to trap little fella in attic, up top of the house. There were all sorts of junk in the attic, from a mandel to sacks full of coals. But what most caught his eye were an old chest, and on the side were writ, Edenfield Scrolls. Now a powerful curiosity gripped Jim, so he bent down to open the chest. It were jammed full with rolls of old parchment, and he picked up the one he liked best. It were story of First Manning Bible, so he started to read for the crack. Within minutes he'd sat down right lathered, 'cause his home were Jim's garden round back. With trembling hands Jim kept reading, and soon he were glad he'd sat down, for not only were that Adam's garden, it had given its name to the town. The story of Adam unfolded, not Bible one, it were this way. He were cooking himself ribs and cabbage when boss came to pass time of day. "How you doing, young Adam?" he questioned. But before lad had time to speak, continued, "I guess it's quite lonely being on your own most of the week. A lad of your age should have someone to give you a lift and a break. So pass me a spare rib and some cabbage, I'll see what a dish I can make." Well, boss stood back from the victuals, and waving a wand from his sleeve, said, as they turned into a woman, "It's near dark. Let's call her Eve." Then Adam and Eve worked together all summer long, such scrolls recall, till Eve went to gather the apples, as Yanks say, that were in fall. The sweet ones were kept out for eating. The Coxes and Worcesters were there, but Bramleys were bailed in brown sugar and left out it some for a day. Days turned into weeks till one morning, while having a stroll down the path, they came across a pond full of Bramleys, bubbled up and expanded behalf, and Adam knelt down and tasted the liquid, and then turned to Eve with a grin and said, "Hey lass, this is Lancashire scrumpy. A bit strength of it isn't quite a sin." They sucked it until they felt frisky, and then had a bit of a do. And by time night had turned into morning, they were well chuffed to be all as they knew. Now in Edenfield, round mid-November, a fig leaf, it's no use at all. So Adam wore a flat cap and a crombie, and Eve wrapped herself up in a shawl. Thank you very much.
Moving on from Edenfield, the next scroll was a gift. Because on the summit between Rochdale and Bury, there's a little place called Jericho. And obviously it would have been a place of historic encounters between the two towns. And this is about one of them. For people who are out of town, Dale and Shakers are the nicknames of the town's two football teams, and Middleton Archer is a commemoration in that nearby town of a band of archers that fought at Flodden. Off you go, Sid.
And this is entitled The Curse of Josh Ewer, which is completely mangled the poor man's name. Josh Ewer. I didn't write it, did I? You'll recall the tale of Jim Ashworth, the lad who found Edenfield Scrolls. And now in the first sheet of parchment the tale of young Adam unfolds. Jim went to the chest for another, so now it were 2 parchments fewer. This new one had title on top of the page. It read, The Curse of Josh Ewer. Again it went back to old days. Like stories in Bible were found when all tribes living in Lanky were kicking each other around. This told tale of Dale lads and Shakers who came out of Rochdale and Bury and lined up opposing on top of the hill and looked at each other, dead worried. Now top of the hill were called Jericho, and on it worked farmer Josh Ewer. And the more that Dale lads and Shakers kicked off, Josh's crop yields were getting much fewer. Most days they were never true winners. They just snarled and wrestled each other and rolled over flattening barley and wheat until they were too whacked to bother. But this time, Dale lads were most wary, for Shakers had glints in their eye, and each one had his right hand behind his back, and what were in them, Dale lads couldn't spy. With a shout then, the Shakers charged forward. You could see they were up for the kill, and right hands revealed frozen black puddings, and they battered Dale lads down thill. That night, in a tap room in Sudden, Dale lads held a council of war, what to do to sort this new weapon. And then a stranger came in through the door. He said, "Aye lads, I'm Middleton Archer, I think I can do you a treat. I'll show you the way to sort Shakers for a few pints and something to eat." Well, next day he turned up at training ground to show he were good at his word, and handed him out bows and arrows, at which much excitement were earned. Dale lads legged it straight back to Jericho, and as Shakers came on the attack, Dale lads armed their bows full and shot 'em, and left 'em there, flat on their back. At this point, Dale lads got greedy, and dancing and shouting with glee, they shot Josh's pig, sheep and cattle and carried 'em home for their tea. Now, Josh Ewer weren't like a normal bloke. He'd got kind of magical power, and he dug out his wand, toads and portions, and ranted and raved for an hour. Then, taking the spell he'd invented, he walked 7 times round Rochdale Way, and each time passed a curse on the borough until it were late in the day. The curse would take 3,000 years to work, but by the year 2009 there were cranes and skyscrapers in Bury, while Rochdale were on the decline. And when folk visit market in Bury, they see everything is delish, but over the hill down in Rochdale, well, you can't even buy meat or fish.
Thanks, Sid. Right, the next one. The biblical story of Joseph and his dreams is so fantastic that you could be forgiven for thinking that he was on something. This scroll proves he was.
Is that it? Am I on again?
You're on again.
I have to talk about Bill in here, and I want my name on top if I'm flogging myself to death here. They can buy them, can't they, instead of me getting up here like that. Right. Joseph's multicoloured dream trip. I have to say I don't understand most of this. Do I? No, because I broke it proper in Charlie. Joseph and brothers were farmers. They sowed and gathered the wheat and stored it in barns for the winter, so as they had something to eat. Along with the harvest came mushrooms, growing in fields all around. One day there were no tip meadow, next day they were all over ground. Now Joseph quite fancied mushrooms, cooked with his bacon and toast. There were big flat ones from the fields, the one that he fancied most. Walking through Rossendale Valley, he once found another kind, long and thin, with tiny brown caps. He thought, perhaps I'll change my mind. So he put him in pan with his bacon, and then put the lot on one toast. And he cooked t'other slice with the flat ones to see which he'd fancy the most. Well, flat slice he had for his starter, and the browns he swallowed down next. Hey up, he thought, these taste magic, which put them in right context. In half an hour he were buzzing. He'd not felt better before. Dressed in his best harlequin blazer, he headed straight out through the door. Corn sheaves, they were stood there at meadow, and he thought they were moving around, with wheat ears shaking and bowing. And then he just passed out on ground. Well, he woke and shook out his blazer. It were in one hell of a state. He looked up and he saw sun bowing down, and he thought, oh, it's getting late. I'd best get a move on. Her mum will be wanting to know why. But mushrooms haven't worn off yet. When he looked up at the sky, the man in the moon, he was smiling, like he were humming a tune. And stars, they were dancing and swaying to the light of the silvery moon. Joy now felt right powerful. Looks like they're doing it just for me. I can't wait to tell all my brothers I'd best get back for my tea. When Joseph told this to his brothers, seemed they were having a laugh. But when he said out some had bound down, well, they thought this were too much for half. They said, as he'd get a good hiding, he better go button his gob. They'd been in fields all day grafting, and he'd ducked out of the job. Father, he knew what had happened, because he'd lived through the 60s, you see. He thought daft beggars been at them mushrooms, just like what happened to me. He called, hey lads, don't get thee fretful, boy's just having a bit of a fit. Strip off his harlequin blazer and chuck the daft lump in his pit.
I have to say right now, Sid, I'm so glad you've come and done these, because I could not have done my own work with much justice if you'd done it. So thanks very much. Just before we go on to the last one of the presentation, just to say that, which is obviously a launch and a signing, and this retails at $11.99, complete with a CD from Sid. But today it's a tenner for the book launch and signed by both me and Sid. So, you know, overwhelm us at the end, won't you? The other thing I wanted to say, you might wonder why I'm dressed like this. It's not because I'm anticipating a complete failure of the book launch. It's just that immediately after, my group rang the writers, their language